Good morning and welcome to the County Seat. I'm your host, Chad Booth. Thank you for taking the time to invite us into your home. Today we are going to talk about the transfer of public lands yet again, but something new. A recent study that was commissioned by the Utah State Public Lands Office looked at the feasibility. It was an economic analysis to see if Utah could really afford to do a transfer. Those results are in, and that will be the topic of our show today. To get a little background on the study, we are going to start our conversation as we move across the state to bring you the most up-to-date information on this project. We will start our conversation this morning welcoming Tony Rampton from the State Office of Public Lands. Tony, you had a lot to do with the very beginnings of what this study was about. How did the question come up?
Well, when HB 148, which called for the transfer of public lands, was in process, and then shortly after that, I worked for PLPCO, the Public Lands Policy Coordination Office, and we looked at the entire issue and recognized that we didn't know enough about the public lands. We didn't have inventories. We didn't have cash flows. We didn't have costs. We didn't have revenues. We didn't have the resource base. There were any number of factors that funnel into the larger issue that we just didn't have a handle on. So we recommended to the legislature that they commission a study and an economic analysis of the transfer of public lands to tell us what would happen and what would the economics look like. The legislature, I think very wisely, passed HB 142 in the 2013 session. And HB 142 asked PLPCO to oversee a study and an economic analysis. And the legislation also contained a laundry list of things that the study needed to examine in order to give us enough information that decisions hereafter can be thoughtful decisions, can be based on economic fact, not on speculation, so that we know how all the pieces fit. There are so many moving parts that you need to understand every moving part and how it relates to the whole. We now have that. The study was completed by a team from the University of Utah, Weber State University, and Utah State University. They were all economists that participated. The study is 700 pages in length. It's exhaustive, it's detailed, it's scrupulously objective, and it tells us what we needed to know before we could make rational and meaningful decisions going down the road. So I think that with this study, we've made a huge step in terms of knowing for the first time just exactly what a transfer of the public lands would actually mean.
I guess the question that anybody who's been following this issue is, okay, so what's in the report? Does it work?
The short answer is yes, from an economic perspective, but it's not a simple answer. This is a very complex situation, and there, as I said, there's so many moving parts that you have to make certain assumptions and things have to fit together. But one of the things that we asked the researchers to do, and which they have done, is do some economic modeling where they took various scenarios and they plugged these various scenarios into these models, and then they ran the models to show what future revenues would be and what future costs would be under the different scenarios. Under most of the scenarios that they modeled, the state would come out ahead in terms of revenues exceeding costs. For instance, in 2013, the federal government's costs were about $50 to $60 million less than its revenues. some of the scenarios that were modeled show that the state would do very well over the next 20 years if the lands were transferred. A lot of it depends on the long-term price of oil and gas. Coal also figures into that. But the modeling was based on industry projections. I think the modeling is solid. I think the assumptions are solid. So that's a long way of saying that, yes, the state could afford to do this. There would be challenges. A lot of those challenges are outside of the control of state government. But yes, the state could do it, and in some scenarios they could do it very well.
Some rational critics of this process will say, okay, great, you've got 20 years, but what is the sustainable long term? I mean, look out 100 years, does it still make sense to do?
It's hard to look 100 years in the future. It's hard to look 20 years in the future. It's hard to know what's going to happen in terms of energy sources in the next 80 years. I think it's quite clear that for the next 30 or 40 years, we're still going to be reliant to some degree on fossil fuels. We don't have the technology and the infrastructure in place to replace fossil fuels with renewable energy or with nuclear energy. We just don't have the facilities right now. Down the road, we may. But it doesn't matter what it is you're using for your energy sources, public lands are going to be involved. Wind energy involves public lands. Solar energy involves public lands. Nuclear energy involves public lands. Geothermal energy involves public lands. So the resources, the natural resources in the state are going to continue to play a role in the energy outlook of this country for a long time to come. So no, we can't say what's going to happen in 100 years. I don't know. But the immediate question is, could the state handle it economically now and for the foreseeable future? And the answer is yes.
The feds look at this report and they say, well, I guess we should do that. Could the report get them to all of a sudden realize they had a cash cow on their hand? And
they already know that they do, and they can't do anything about it. One of the problems with having these public lands in federal ownership and control is that because of certain laws and certain regulations and certain environmental factors, the federal government's hands are largely tied to do what the state could do in terms of making the lands more productive. So the federal government, they understand what is there. They understand what they could do. They're not fully funding the public lands. They're selling the public lands very short in terms of funding. There are too many people wanting the money back in Washington, and it's going other places. So I don't think the federal government could do, I know the federal government couldn't do what the state could do.
Great. Any other thoughts for us on this topic?
Well, the key is going to be balance, because the report also says that recreation is an enormous economic driver. So anybody who involves himself or herself in decisions down the road has got to balance that need against energy production.
Tony, thank you so much for your thoughts. We'll be back with more of our conversation here on the economics of the transfer of public lands after this commercial break.
Remember those good old days? The places you went with your family when you were young? Reinvest in those old memories by making new ones. Beaver County is the perfect place to start that new tradition. Enjoy your favorite pastimes with family and friends. Connect with the history and culture of Utah in a place that's looking to the future. Modern conveniences minus the hustle and bustle of other locales. Beaver County, your adventure starts here.
You go through the day-to-day repeating what you did yesterday. Don't you wish you could access that piece of your life that's missing? Find the beauty, serenity, family fun, or anything else that's missing from your life in the Cedar City Bryan Head area. Gain access to your adventure, whether it's camping, hiking, the arts, festivals, or just a getaway. Visit cedarcityayl.com for details on all the adventures that you can access in scenic southern Utah.
There are a couple great things about the Uinta Basin. One is it's still small, it's community.
That makes you feel like when you go somewhere, you know everybody.
Where you know your neighbor knows you, and you can trust each other. People look out for one another.
I grew up in the Uinta Basin, and I think that it's a good place to raise a family.
So we packed up our 3 kids, and here we came to Uinta County, and what a great place it was.
It's not too big, it's not too small.
And it has a lot to offer that you just don't get in the big city anymore.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are continuing our conversation on our update on the transfer of public lands. It started with House Bill 148 a few years ago. We moved our conversation over to the Utah Association of Counties headquarters in their conference room. Joining us for this part of the conversation are the 2 senior research analysts from the University of Utah who worked on the study, John Downen and Jan Stambro, and also joining us, Representative Kevin Stratton from House District number 48. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
People were expecting that there's no way the state could afford to pay for this. And oil and gas was going to be the big driver. And the perception out there is that you are going to have to pick up the flag of Sarah Palin and just say, drill, baby, drill. What did you find in your research? Is that really what this analysis boiled down to?
It did in one respect, because most of the money right now comes from oil, gas, and coal. So those are the things that we looked at, but there are other sources of revenue available to the state as well. It just is going to take some time for the state to develop those programs. For example, there are user fees embedded in BLM and Forest Service activities that never show up as revenue from public lands. So the state could at some point decide to replicate those fees, and that would be another source of revenue. But like I say, in the short term, oil, gas, and coal are the primary sources.
Well, even in the scenarios that we did model with oil and gas production, we at the most increased drilling by only 15% over the historical baseline. So we're not certainly advocating or indicating that the state needs to be drilled.
When you look at that and you take it into account, some people haven't actually even read the summary of this yet. And Tony kind of covered the fact that, yeah, this is a can-do scenario. In the process of the research, though, what was your biggest surprise?
That it's a can-do scenario, I guess.
You know, I just say that one thing that really brings validity and solidifies that this is really an independent snapshot and look at this is the fact we looked at best case scenarios, worst case scenarios. The research was done by very capable economists that recognized in our state independent of any pressure, and in that sense they found that they answered the question, can the state afford it? They answered the economic analysis, which is just one piece of the big picture, but it's an important piece.
You know, I have heard in my conversations around the state as I travel that some people have said, yeah, well, the state's going to win out great, but the local communities and the counties are not going to benefit from this, and that they are going to see perhaps they go backwards and the state advance their position. And I see the governments and the communities as more integrated than that. If somebody were to posture that to you in your research, what would your answer be to that?
We didn't really look at that issue, but I think people have to understand that the land is in a county. And the counties really have a lot more sway with the state than they do with the federal agencies. So what they see as a valuable activity or resource that isn't being developed at the county level, they have a local ear that will listen to them, and a local organization that's not mired in bureaucracy that is, and regulations that are developed you know, thousands of miles away.
I put it this way. Can you access your neighbor today easier than you can access somebody that lives in Florida or Texas or the Northeast? It really becomes a local control and local input issue.
And that's actually a very good point. We'll take a break. We'll be back with the county seat, talking about an update on the transfer of public lands after this commercial break.
Landscapes as diverse as the people who venture to find them await. All you have to do is find a place to begin. Moab, Utah, in Grand County, where adventure begins.
There is a place where young and old make connections, where kids feel like grown-ups, and grown-ups feel like kids. There is a place where beauty arises in contrast, where wonder is universal, and laughter second nature. There is a place where friends find a future, families find each other, and feelings find their home. There is a place.
Planning your next conference or corporate event? The Davis Conference Center offers 70,000 square feet of flexible meeting and exhibit space, plus high-tech audio-visual services that will make your event a success. Whether you're planning a training, meeting, company retreat, wedding, or large convention, let the staff at the Davis Conference Center help you arrange your next event. Located east of I-15 in Layton, call 801-416-8888 or visit davisconferencecenter.com today.
I let me be me. Oh, you know that I'm finally free. Ooh, you know that let me be me. Oh, you know that I'm finally free to be me.
Welcome back to the county seat. We're talking today about the transfer of public lands. We left with a question begging to be answered before we went to the commercial break, and that is that some people are viewing this and saying that the transfer of public lands will free the state from the yoke of the Environmental Protection Agency, the Wildlife Act, the airsheds will no longer be an issue, the litigation from environmental groups will cease. In your study of this, do you see that as part of this scenario?
The short answer is no, because the state still is bound by the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, most of the Endangered Species Act. None of those are really regulated by land ownership, but what the state will have more latitude in dealing with is NEPA. There are only a few. There are circumstances where NEPA would still apply, but if it didn't involve federal land, the state would not have to comply with NEPA.
Kevin, is the state looking at having its own mechanism that would be a substitute for the National Environmental Policy Act, except streamlined to a state level or effectiveness? Or?
Last year in the 2014 legislative session, for example, we passed the first State Wilderness Act, and it becomes more of doing that is common sense based upon what's the best practice policy procedure here in this way, instead of a one size fits all across the nation policy. But no, there's recognition that we still have wildlife, we still have air, and we still have water. All those things need to be addressed properly and used in proper allocation and proper and wise stewardship of the resources available.
It doesn't take long for anybody to turn to television and they'll see an ad campaign running, and I know this is a harping question and it's become kind of a debate, but I think we should clear the air on it, that the Southern Utah Wilderness Alliance is running a rather aggressive ad campaign. I don't watch much TV and I still see them, that says boy, the transfer of public lands is a bad thing, and that all the state is going to do is sell off the land. Was that even considered in your analysis?
No, we didn't consider that at all. In fact, HB 148, which initially called for the transfer of lands, it says that if the state does turn around and sell any of the lands, the federal government gets 95% of the proceeds. The state only gets 5%. So right there's no incentive for the state to sell the lands. In our meetings with FLPCO and legislators, they stated repeatedly, and it's pretty clear even up to the governor's office, that Utah is a public land state, and they intend to stay that way. They recognize the value of recreation and open space, and yeah, there was no consideration of selling it.
As you guys are kind of economists, that does raise an interesting question, because someone would say, well, if you sell off a parcel of private land, let's say, sell off something to a rancher for grazing, he's going to have to pay for the land. Now he's going to have to pay for property taxes, but he'll own the land. Is there a certain economy of scale in managing land to multiple use that you couldn't get from single use by making a sale?
I think that there's economy of scale in managing large tracts of land. The federal agencies have done that very efficiently if you look at what they spend per acre and you compare that to other things. They are able to reach economies of scale because they have a lot of land to manage.
We really look at a fear tactic approach, and we need to ask ourselves, do we really believe as a nation, as a people, in the right to pursue your life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness? Is that something that we believe central to that is what we do with the property and the stewardship of it? This is much more about, we try and degrade it to this is all about money. It is not about the money.
I wish this were an hour-long show some days. This is one of the days that I do, because there's a lot to talk about here. We'll be right back with the County Seat after this commercial break.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah Valley? Explore the Wasatch Mountains? Snap a family photo at Bridal Veil Falls. Cool off on Utah Lake or the Provo River. No matter what you're searching for, you can find it in Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
Color. It's something that can be seen. But have you ever wanted to reach out and touch it? Experience it. In San Juan County, Utah, color comes to life like nowhere else on earth. Color can be more than an abstract. Color can be your gateway to a new world. Visit San Juan County and explore the past, present, and future in a way that you've only dreamed of. San Juan County. Color your experience.
ATV? Check. Four-wheel driving? Check. Bouldering? Check. Mountain biking? Check. Hiking? Check. River rafting? Check. Adventure is about more than just crossing activities off of a list, but hey, if you can find a place that gives you everything you're looking for, all the better. In Emery County, you'll find the San Rafael Swell, trails, lakes, and the small-town hospitality you're looking for. San Rafael Country, in the heart of Utah. Visit us and check something off your list.
Kanab, base camp for your southern Utah adventures. You belong in Kanab.
Welcome back to the County Seat. We are concluding our conversation on the transfer of public lands, the update, the economic analysis that was completed for the state. And I just want to throw it out for some final thoughts. I'll start with you, Kevin.
Thank you. You know, when we talk about the dollars and cents and does this make sense, the economic analysis shows that it's very feasible and appropriate and responsible to pursue the transfer of public lands. But how do you put a dollar amount on the opportunity to take a walk in the mountains with your grandson? We're talking there about access. And on that walk, how do you put a dollar amount on what you might see? A newborn elk, or a fawn deer, or how do you put a value on that? So when we talk about where we are today, we have to realize that the status quo, the way that the structure has us now managing and caring for our public lands, is unacceptable. It falls short of what we need to do to have our land there for future generations, many generations in the future. And that's why we talk about the stewardship of our public lands. When we talk about the health of our public lands, we talk about the access of our public lands, we talk about the use and the productivity of public lands. To boil it down to dollars and cents is just a cheapening and a prostitution of what the real issues are. This is about the pursuit and the rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness.
Well, I want to make one thing clear. On the study, we were asked specifically not to make recommendations to the state. That's really the state's role. We were asked to identify the status quo, what's happening right now, and what are the potentials. And that's what the study does. The potential revenue sources, what happens under different scenarios with those sources, but we didn't make any estimate about how much more efficiently the state could manage the lands. We were asked not to make those kinds of recommendations.
What's ahead for public lands transfer in the upcoming session?
Well, in the last several sessions, we've had some specific issues that have, in a responsible way, nurtured and blossomed the process that takes place. There will be many different pieces of legislation dealing with many different issues. And so as we look at that, there'll be pieces of legislation dealing with land use, as we receive the public lands, how can we do that to enhance and build and make sure that we're doing all in our power to be wise stewards of what we've been given, to raise our children and do the things that we need to do, educate, and have those God-given rights and liberties that are available to us.
I want to thank you all for joining us for this conversation. We obviously are going to have to get together again and discuss this, maybe midstream through the legislative session, to take a scorecard. We want to thank you for inviting us into your home each week for the county seat. Please share this information with your friends. Interact with us on social media. We would appreciate your support and input there, and we will look for you next week on the county seat. If you like this video, then we invite you to subscribe to our channel, The County Seat. You can do that here. And we invite you to share with your friends. We also invite you to get all the latest up-to-date information by following us on our social media channels. And if all else fails, make sure that you watch The County Seat Sunday morning at 8:30 right here on ABC4 Utah.